Hey, Dr. Von Duke here with your quick and dirty guide to Rubric 8 of the Special Education ETPA portfolio. Rubric 8 comes from Task 2, which is your instructional commentary, and it focuses in on question 5. So what's the guiding question for Rubric 8? Rubric 8 basically is asking you, how did you get your student to respond to you? How did you prompt or elicit them to respond? Did you provide them with specific feedback, and then did they immediately apply it? And your score around that depends on how you answer. And then how does Rubric 8 relate to other rubrics? Well, it sets the groundwork for Rubric 12 and 13, because in Rubric 12 you're going to talk about the specific feedback that you gave and how it related to the student's needs and reinforces strengths. And you're also in Rubric 13 going to be prompted to ask, how did you also explain or support your student in using your feedback? So if you gave them a strategy, did you watch them and coach them as they worked through that strategy? If you've looked at my pre-rubrics part of this course, of the course that I offer through this, or the pre-rubrics tips that I give in this YouTube channel, you'll know that on my lesson plans I would have specified places for you to address specific feedback related to your students' needs and strengths and understanding its use. So the scores for Rubric 8, if I shorten them down to a quick list here, you get a level 1 score if you provide feedback but it's inaccurate. You get a level 2 if you prompt your student to answer, they answer, and then you tell them if it's right or wrong. Hey, Timmy, what's the answer to number 5? 3. Good job, Timmy. That's it. That's your 2. A score of 3, asks you to describe how you elicited a response. So in the commentary, it asks you to describe how you elicited a response. You're actually not scored on that. By the time, if you look at the rubric, you'll see that you're not. What they want to know is, did you provide specific feedback to your student's response? So did they answer correctly? Tell them specifically what part they answered correctly. Did they answer incorrectly? Tell them specifically what part was incorrect. And then describe how that student used that feedback immediately in a follow-up response to self-correct, to practice that response that you gave them, that strategy, that step, that thing they forgot. They would have done it immediately, and you would have prompted them to do that. To get to score a 4 on the rubric, and I think this is a little bit odd. So let me give you an example of this. You're going to provide that specific feedback again, but this time you leave space for that student to initiate the application of that feedback or the strategy you gave, or maybe you even taught a little bit extra of the content or some side view of the content, and they initiated something on their own immediately. So let me give you an example of this. And I think this depends very much on your focused learner, and especially work, which is why it's always my advice to bank some points in task 1, because task 2 is not all in your hands. But I had a student, for instance, who was very gifted, and I was giving him some tutoring on some math problems, and I gave him a strategy to use, and he was like, oh, wait, what if I tried it on a problem like this? And he took some time, and he actually created a problem, and then he tried it and solved it. And I was like, hey, good job. Let's check that, or what have you. That worked, great. And he goes, okay, let me try it again. Let me think of a problem like that. So that is a perfect example of me as a teacher allowing the space for the student to initiate a response and being quiet and appreciating that they're pushing their conceptual memory and understanding further. You might not have a student that does that. So a good teacher is going to allow space for this. Might not happen. So you're kind of hit. This is the one rubric I think where you're a little bit hit by your student's response. You could say in here something like, I would have allowed him for this response, but he was hesitant to try it. See how that goes. I don't think it's going to score for you because the rubric is so specific, but that would be evidence that you were nevertheless applying good teacher strategies to your work with your focused learner. And then to score a 5, you would move the focused learner to self-evaluation or correction. So an example of that might be that you provide that student with a step wise list of pieces to go through as he's, say, answering a math problem or writing out a paragraph or what have you. And he goes back and he checks that he's completed each aspect of that list correctly, and therefore the work that he or she has done is correct. And you would have coached them through that process. So that would be a 5, but you would have to catch that on camera. Now, to give you an example of my draft document, which I offer in my course, which you can get to, I'll show you in the last screen how to get there. And it's also, my link tree rather, is in the description below, so you can get to everything there. But anyway, if you were going to fill out the draft document before you fill out the commentary, which is always my advice, you know, pull the evidence together, write it well, and then put it into your commentary. That ensures that you will not go over the commentary limit on pages, and you're just not randomly putting things in there that the reviewer has to sift through, and they will reward you with higher points because they can find your work. So at a level 2, you would superficially prompt the student and evaluate yes or no on the correct answer. And I leave that blank because that's not hard to do at a level 3 to get a score of 3 on Rubric 8. So you would provide a specific feedback on their performance and evidence that they applied it. And it doesn't really ask you much about how you elicited that, what they said that you gave feedback on, but obviously you would include that in the transcription that played out the whole scenario for the reviewer. So you'd have a timestamp, you would transcribe what they said, what you said, what they said, and what you said back. And then you would explain after the transcription. So you're not just putting the evidence in there, but you're explaining that transcription, why you gave that feedback or how it helped that student to achieve the performance. So this explanation would be, my student forgot to take away 10 when subtracting with regrouping. I told the student they can cross out the number in the tens place, write a new number above it to remember when they borrow that the number changes. And then I gave my student an opportunity to try a similar problem again using the strategy. And so all of that would be the evidence of the feedback follow-up, and the feedback would all be probably located next to each other on the video. If not, you would put a separate timestamp. However, if your student also initiated a follow-up as I described previously, you might need a timestamp, and you might need to transcribe that area too. And the explanation here would be that the student noticed that he made a similar mistake in a subsequent problem and tried my strategy without my prompting, and then you would show evidence for that. So as always, I give this channel to you as a public service. I try to get to the heart of each rubric so that as you're writing it, you make sure that you're focusing on the thing that's really going to make the difference between a 2 and a 3 and a 3 and a 4 and a 4 and a 5 on your score. It's my desire to lessen the ambiguity and stress and uncertainty as you're filling this out, and sort of bring all the disparate parts of the different papers and advice that you're given together in something that's very cohesive and clear. And I've done all the work thinking about how the moving parts fit together. I also offer a systematic course it's only $20 because I don't see why you would ask for a lot of funds when you're hoping that lots of people would take that course, and it's passive. And I also have a consulting service. So you can find all the information about that on my link tree there. And good luck, and I'll see you at the next quick and dirty video.